like to view every new year as a new chapter in my life. New opportunities, new people to meet, new New Year's resolutions to F up, you know? Normal stuff. But what keeps adding some change are the many different pieces of art that I drink up. And 2024 was, in that regard, no different, while giving me so much new. Of course, there were several games that came out last year, but surprisingly, I didn't find that much interest in wanting to try them out. So I did what I've been telling my friends I wanted to do for the longest time. I went back to what we all call the back catalog. You know, I wanted to go back and play some oldies but goldies. Doesn't mean that I didn't touch any recent interactive experiences, but this list is primarily filled with games made some years prior, going even 2 decades back since they were put on a pedestal for others to enjoy. All that being said, let's start off with the most recent release, as I feel that is probably the most boring thing to discuss, even if I ended up really enjoying it. So the first game on my list of favorite games, that some of them didn't and others did come out in 2024, is...
I got a letter. The name on the envelope said Mary. My wife's name. It's ridiculous. Couldn't possibly be true. That's what I keep telling myself. Mary died of that damn disease 3 years ago.
Remember how no one had faith in this game? As it was during its development, how everyone dunked on the developers' blooper team? Like, in all seriousness though, can you really blame those people considering their previous escapades? I think I'm gonna die again. Even I went more cynical than I usually am, striving to remain skeptical. It was difficult not falling into the pitfall of pessimism when it came to discussing this game during its development, yet somehow, against all odds, I really enjoyed this game. Having made my thoughts on remakes in general before, I kept my constant question of, why this game? Why not a shitty one? That maybe could be made good, but now that I've played it, enjoyed it, and finished it, I'm happy it turned out the way it did. A perfect exception to my rule. There are, of course, certain things that I heavily prefer in the original, regardless of how they changed those things in the remake for something different. I miss having a fixed camera style in certain games. The fact that everything these days have to follow the same designs as the super popular stuff is getting aggravating. How much longer are we gonna have to stare at our protagonist's back during gameplay? I'm sick of it. Some characters are not designed to be primarily looked at from that angle. Like RE4, I actually prefer the original because of, you know, the originality with the story, the jankiness and weirdness with the gameplay. I don't know, it's just, I have this weird relationship with remakes, and I want to say more, but the thing is that before or prior to its release, I actually was pretty much done with my In the Mind of James Sunderland video, but as I saw, oh my god, this game is actually pretty decent, I wanted to implement it into my video, but as I started to kind of start with version 2.0 or 2.1 or whatever you want to call it, there were so many inconsistencies and so many things I had to change that it kind of burned me out, so I needed to take a small break. So, you know, something to look forward in the near future. But since it's been such a long time since my, you know, last big video, you know what, here's a small teaser of what you may, you know, what you can expect of that video. Please have a look and enjoy.
At last, we may celebrate the coming of our rightful ruler. The return of the sovereign.
If this list was based on the overall quality of the game, Dragon's Dogma 2 would be in the highest probability at the bottom. The story is completely unsatisfying and nonsensical. The gameplay, while having a great combat system, does not continue to add depth throughout the playthrough to stay interesting the entire way through. And the presentation is actually pretty banger. I love the visuals and audio of this thing. But this list is about games I personally enjoyed playing. And in that regard, I adored my time with this finale of Itsuno's time at Capcom. Hell, I actually wanted to continue to play, but with the lack of a hard mode or a scaling in the New Game Plus stuff, I haven't been able to really go back into Vermont to take down the Pretender King. So waiting for Capcom to add this system to make it interesting to keep playing with the same levels and gears and so on, we got an easy mode. I genuinely have no clue what they were thinking. Like, sure, I get it. Not everyone has the capabilities to play a challenging video game. So of course, having an easy mode, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when everyone have been screaming loud, please, I want a more challenging experience. And the fact that there's a New Game Plus where you bring your stats and gear and stuff, it messes with my mind. I don't understand it. I'm hungry, give me more! All in all, Dragon's Dogma 2 is just Dragon's Dogma 1, again, without the Dark Arisen stuff. Crossing my fingers that we will get an expansion to turn it into something beautiful. Shouldn't have been the case in the first place, but you know, I want more of this, with some differences to make it stand out. The hope of fixing the main story is... I mean, it's just not going to happen, I fear. So while, with my critical mind, I can claim that it is a massive disappointment for someone who was really excited for the sequel, on the other side of my brain, the loving thing that I call the poo-poo brain, it is so good. Therefore, yay me? Well, maybe the third game, am I right?
We're prepared to hear their statement at any time.
Oh, your suit is loud.
Ace Attorney is a series that I feel everyone has heard of, or at least have some familiar with the concept, but shrug it off as a weird puzzle game with funny looking character designs. It is not until one is willing to try one of them, where one gets the revelation of just how amazing this series actually is. Great stories, great characters, and fantastic mysteries, which can sometimes go really dark. There are some things that haven't aged the best, especially when it comes to the first 2 outings, but overall, Phoenix Wright's adventure is something I absolutely would recommend to everyone. But there were some time where it was difficult to get the hand of these DS games, and the one standing out completely was the sequel to the Prosecutor spin-off. Ace Attorney Miles Edgeworth Investigations 2. You know, I just remember one day coming across this first one just randomly at the store, and I, bought it on the whim. And it was such a great experience that I really wanted to play the sequel, only to quickly realize that they hadn't localized it out of Japan yet. And in 2024, finally, I can play it. And it was great. And now, we actually have every single Ace Attorney game, and it's available right now on any digital store. Just go get it. Play them. They're great. Aside from the fact that I actually can understand the story now, I found a great deal of pleasure realizing that Investigation 2 is far superior to the first one, at least in my opinion. Also, the change in art style using drawn sprites this time around is just great on the bigger screen, while it's also a great relief in that you can change back to the original look if you want to do that. If I were to criticize one thing about this release, it would probably be the fact that the localizers added some jokes that I can't simply believe would be there during the original outing in 2011. Like, of course, this series love their weird-ass jokes.
Well, we know whose milkshake brings all the boys to the yard.
Jesus. Oh my god.
And if there's one thing that Ace Attorney has mastered throughout all the games, it would be the amazing translations. Japanifornia is my favorite country, but some of the jokes did indeed rip me away from the beautiful state that is called immersion. Of course, this doesn't turn the Investigation collection into a lesser product, but it is something to mention. And yeah, one thing I want to mention one more time. Please try out all of these games. They're so good. We have pretty much all of them. We have the original Ace Attorney trilogy. We have Apollo Justice trilogy. We got the 2 Investigations games. We have the Chronicles, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles that takes place in like feudal Japan. The only one I think we do not have yet is the Professor Layton crossover, but I never particularly cared about that one. But one thing I do care about is something I talked quite recently on this channel. So I don't want to just repeat myself from the previous video on my channel, but as someone who grew up with Heroes of Might and Magic 3, 4, and 5, the 2 following strategy games weren't up to the standards for HOM fans when they came out. And with their rather awful release quality, and the fact that every fan screamed and demonized the 2 of them, it didn't really spark an interest in going deep into the mechanics or stories. Well, 13 years later, after its release, I was willing to give the 6th game a chance. I don't particularly know what caused me to do such a thing, as this was before Unfrozen revealed Olden Era, which, you know how it is. Sometimes life can just randomly connect stuff like that. Whatever did cause me to try out these 2 games, I am glad that it happened. Not going to claim that I'm some sort of strategic genius. My greatest tactic lie in throwing the first punch fast and hard. Not exactly the protagonist of Queen's Gambit. But that has never stopped me from loving this series, and now I can say that every single installment, including the 6th and 7th, have something to offer. Sure, they're the lowest on my elite gaming tier list, but they're still wonderful. I like the melodramatic story of the family in Hom 6. I found the standalone narratives of 7 to be fun one-time playthroughs, and when I finally got to enjoy the Lost Tales of Axioth for the first time, the 2 campaigns that was cut from the 4th game, my favorite, the game gave me a genuine laugh as I got the revelation that Dogwoggle inspired the antagonist of the Haven storyline to act out on his ambition by telling him of his own failures. Dogwoggle is such a moron, and I love him for it. Man, I really hope that Unfrozen is able to deliver on some awesome stories and characters. Like, I am constantly, these past couple of days, even weeks, been keeping my eye on their Discord server for reveals and stuff, you know, revelations pretty much, and they have nailed everything, and I just have pure excitement because of it. I mean, look how sexy this hero is!
Bone! Bone!
Now, every game that I've talked about so far, I've had some sort of history with. A sequel, a remake, a remaster, but this next one on my list was a game that I've been constantly aware of, but I've never given it any chance or any thoughts, quite frankly. Every time I saw something of it, I just dismissed it because it just didn't seem that interesting to me. But then, I eventually gave it a chance. And it turned out to be my favorite game that I played in 2024. And that game that I have last on this list is... My greatest joys of 2023 was when Tim Cain, creator of Fallout, decided on making a channel here on YouTube. Link in the description. Highly recommended. And on this channel, he started talking about game development and personal anecdotes. Now, as a fan of his game, Arcanum, one of the best CRPGs ever made, I always looked out for videos where he discussed anything involving his time at Troika Game Studios. During his time there, the team made only 3 games, all of which are considered cult classics today. The just mentioned steampunk RPG, Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines, crossing my fingers for that sequel, my god, and The Temple of Elemental Evil. I don't know why, but every time there was a mention of Temple, it just didn't do anything for me. The box art looked, quite frankly, boring. Every time anybody just mentioned Temple in the comment section, it was always about the bugginess and how horrid it was to play it. Every time I talked to friends who have played it, they always sort of claimed that role-playing wise, it was way worse than its contemporaries. But then I saw Cain say this.
I started doing end slides in Fallout and I've never stopped doing them. This is an end slide from Temple where when you get to the end of that game, the game will check your alignment. And if you're really, really evil and you've done some horrible stuff getting there, and if you can beat her to a low health, she'll stop and go, what if I work for you now? She's now your unwilling follower. And you raise the countryside using her and people speak your name in fear.
I grabbed my axe and I was ready to turn this princess of fungi to my personal fungal. Worth it. And man, after the first 3 hours, the game just clicked. Ow, why did that hurt? One thing I adore in RPGs is playing someone truly evil and despicable, yet sadly, not many games allow this sort of character. They usually fall into the trap, stupid evil, as this side of gaming calls it, not giving that interesting choices and usually punishes you far more than rewarding the player for playing how they want. Troika, when they were around, clearly disagreed with this method as well, allowing their audience to play however they see fit. So my first playthrough was as someone truly cruel and dark, and the game not only allowed it, it felt as if this was the primary way to play the story. The ways you can trick the many cults in the temple to your advantage. The many ways you can complete quests that isn't just, I'm evil, I'm going to kill ya because I'm evil. And also some genuine sickening things that I doubt I'll see anytime soon in any new releases these days. I had one of my favorite first playthroughs in a long time. It shocked me so much that I just had to start a new one where I went the goody two-shoes route. One thing to keep in mind, or rather remember, is that this is a Troika game, meaning that it's bugged out of its mind. So if you have an interest in playing it, then you have to do what I did, and that is finding a mod that patches everything called Circle of 8, and also an engine enhancement mod called Temple Plus. Like seriously, don't even consider it, just do it if you're gonna play it. Please, do it. Also worth mentioning is that I feel that Temple has the best combat out of any classic CRPGs, better than the real-time with pause systems of the Infinity Engine games even. The amount of things you can do here is staggering. I even think, based on how the game functions, you probably can beat the game without killing anyone. Though I'm not gonna say that as if it's a fact, but I'm quite certain that it is possible. On the other hand, you can kill everyone. If you want to go full murder hobo mode. I could keep gushing about this game. The temple itself is one of my favorite dungeons in any role-playing game that I've ever played. The art style with its pre-rendered graphics looked great even to this day compared to many other games at the time that started going into 3D like Neverwinter Nights. And the music holds some truly nice tunes, mainly the Hamlet theme. All of this being said, there were some issues that were not just bugs. Based on your team alignment, you will get a special opening to the game, similar to Dragon Age Origins system, only here it is pretty bad, a severe lack of depth and it feels just tacked on. Even with the mods to put in the quest that was removed before its release, there's a lack of stuff to do when you get further into the game. The tutorial sucks. I had to look into YouTube to figure certain mechanics and systems out and understand what some things were happening. Like, again, it got very confusing. And the story is not that interesting. It is far more intriguing in concept than execution. As someone who values story quite highly, this was a genuine disappointment. Like, it was interesting and intriguing in concept, but execution, not so much. But overall, I am so happy with this game. I'm so happy I played it, I'm so happy I tried it, and I know for a fact that I will replay it. And that is one of the highest things that I can applaud a game for. If you go back to an oldie, right, and it looks uninteresting, and then you play it, and then you realize that you found a hidden gem, what else is there to say? And that is my list of favorite games that I played in 2024. Not that many, but there were other ones that I could discuss. Let's call them honorable mentions, I guess. Like Lethal Company that I played with some friends, Castlevania Dawn of Sorrows. Think about it, we have so many Castlevania games now that are easy to access. Can we please get the PS2 games, please, Konami? And Nancy Drew's Sea of Darkness. One of these are not like the others. If I were to list them from least enjoyed to top, my list would probably be like this. Alright, I'm heading off and I'm gonna start with a new project. So until then, I'm KingJGrim, or the guy who needs to fix his front tooth. Whatever you prefer, and I'll see you guys next time. Seriously, this is what happens when you just drink soda, people. It's porcelain.